The night was thick with stillness, save for the harsh slap of police boots on concrete and the soft hiss of chatter from uniformed voices. Dispatch called it possible drowning, but nothing about the scene felt routine. The first officer on site moved with hesitant urgency, helmet light bobbing across the rippling surface of a suburban swimming pool. He found Daniel Bennett face down, drifting like a broken toy, hair darkened at the temples, hands limp at his sides. The woman, Sarah, was kneeling beside the water's edge, shaking, the hem of her sundress soaked. Her eyes, wide and unfocused, darted between Daniel's motionless body and the approaching paramedics. She repeated a single phrase, "Please, it was an accident," over and over, but her voice cracked, the insistence hollow like breath puffing at a frosted window. Inside, echoes of the night's gradual escalation stuttered through my mind. Muffled arguing, the slam of a cabinet, then the scream. Not a shriek of terror, something more human, ragged, raw. I noted her posture, shoulders hunching with each exhalation, knuckles white against warm tile. Neighbors clustered behind hedges, their gazes hidden yet palpable. No one spoke directly at her, but I understood their unasked questions. Who was she? What had happened in this quiet home? Their voices filtered in later. I thought I heard yelling. She ran outside crying. He looked like he was chasing her. Slivers of impression, too fragmented to yield truth. Only Sarah remained certain in her delusion, voice broken yet insistent in the hushed glow of red and blue lights. Officer Martinez knelt beside Sarah. "Ma'am, can you tell me what happened?" Sarah lifted her head. I came out and he was just floating." Her gaze flickered to the pool. "He must have slipped." Paramedic Jensen crouched near Daniel. "Sir, can you hear me?" Silence. Jensen exchanged a look with Martinez. He's unresponsive." A neighbor, voice strained, called from beyond a hedge. "Are you okay?" Sarah's reply was barely a whisper. Yes, I'm fine." Another neighbor muttered, "We thought we heard," but the words trailed off. Martinez gently took Sarah's hand. "We need to ask more questions, but right now, just breathe, all right?" Sarah's eyes darted up. "I didn't mean for this." Arizona heat clung to the night air like a living thing, fragrant with dust and the faint sweetness of desert blooms. The pool water caught siren reflections, rippling lights of red and blue over shimmering, still surface. Steam rose from pavement, where pavement absorbed the day's relentless sun, and the hum of overhead lights buzzed softly above. Sarah's dress, a pale wash of lavender, clung to her legs. The fabric darkened by dampness at the skirt's hem. Her hair, loose and dark, fell over her shoulders in tangled tendrils, damp sweat matting strands against her pale skin. The moon was faint, obscured by a layer of haze that made everything feel dreamlike. An echo of normalcy fractured. Nearby, garden hose lay coiled, droplets glistening along its twisted length. A lawn chair teetered, its legs half sunk in damp grass. The scene felt frozen, still but charged, like a photograph waiting to reveal the motion hidden in its frame. By morning, the desert sun was back with its usual ferocity, blazing across the rooftops of the Bennett residence like nothing had happened the night before. But for Sarah Bennett, everything had changed. She sat at her kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee gone cold, staring out at the backyard pool, the same pool where Daniel had taken his last breath. To the world, Sarah was the embodiment of suburban grace, mother of two, church volunteer, the kind of woman who baked for the PTA and smiled at neighbors while watering roses. Her life was curated perfection, every detail smoothed over like frosting on a cake. But inside, the cracks were spreading. Memories surfaced in jagged flashes. Daniel pacing the kitchen last week, his eyes sharp with accusation. The late-night phone calls she'd taken in the garage when she thought he was asleep. His growing suspicion was like smoke curling under a locked door, slowly filling the room until there was nowhere left to breathe. This morning, as reporters lingered near the street, Sarah rehearsed the lines she'd give them. It was an accident. He slipped. Over and over. She didn't cry, couldn't cry. Instead, she replayed the last words Daniel had spoken to her in the heat of their final argument. Words sharp enough to slice through all the years of marriage, cutting straight to the one thing she had worked so hard to bury. Her past. The one she thought was dead. But Daniel had found it. Sarah. The voice came from the hallway. Elena, her sister, had shown up unannounced. Sarah didn't turn. "I told you not to come." Elena stepped into the kitchen, eyes flicking toward the backyard. "The news says it was an accident. Is that what you're sticking with?" Sarah's jaw clenched. "That's what happened. You sure about that?" Elena's tone carried too much knowing, too much history. "Daniel didn't understand," Sarah muttered, almost to herself. Elena leaned against the counter. Or maybe he understood too well. Their eyes met, two sisters bound by blood and secrets. The weight of old sins coiled between them like barbed wire. Morning sunlight flooded the kitchen in harsh streaks, dust motes drifting like ash in the air. The stainless steel appliances gleamed, reflecting Elena's shape as she moved, her shadow cutting across the floor tiles. Outside, the pool glimmered in cruel brightness, its surface deceptively calm, betraying nothing of the violence from hours before. On the counter sat a half-eaten bowl of cereal, milk congealing, abandoned when Sarah heard Elena's car in the driveway. A family photo hung on the wall, Sarah, Daniel, and the kids smiling beneath a desert sunset. Its glass cracked from a careless fall months ago. The air was heavy with heat, with silence, with things left unsaid. 2 days after Daniel's death, the neighborhood was still buzzing with speculation. News vans had come and gone, their satellite dishes like metal vultures circling above the Bennett's manicured cul-de-sac. But behind the walls of the house, Sarah Bennett wasn't sleeping. Every time she closed her eyes, Daniel's voice crept back, those final arguments replaying like a broken cassette. "I know what you did, Sarah." She couldn't erase it, and now Elena had stirred the waters further. Before leaving yesterday, she'd mentioned a name Sarah hadn't heard in years. Tomas. One word, softly spoken, but enough to crack the dam wide open. Sarah had tried so hard to kill that life. Different name, different state, different friends. Back then she was Sarah Keller, reckless and desperate, running scams with Tomas across state lines. He was smooth, charming, dangerous, the kind of man who smiled while lying straight to your face. Daniel never knew the details, only hints, things Sarah confessed years ago when they were young and foolish and drunk on love. But now, someone had been contacting him, letters with no return address, phone calls from blocked numbers. Maybe Elena was right, maybe Tomas was circling back, dragging Sarah's past into the present like a corpse dredged from the bottom of a lake. That night, Sarah found herself digging through Daniel's desk, searching for the letters. Her hands trembled as she unfolded one, the words scrawled in messy black ink. "Does your wife tell you everything, Daniel? Because she didn't tell me she was getting married when she left me to take the fall." Elena called as Sarah sat on the bed, letter in hand. "You found it, didn't you?" Elena's voice was quiet, almost sympathetic. Sarah swallowed hard. "He wrote to Daniel. He knows where I am." "I told you he wouldn't stay buried," Elena said. "Tomas doesn't let go," Sarah's voice cracked. "It was 10 years ago. I was young, stupid." Elena paused. "Stupid doesn't erase what you did to him. Or what happened to the girl." Sarah's breath caught. Don't bring her into this." "I'm not the one bringing her back, Sarah. He is." The house felt smaller at night, the air heavy and unyielding. Outside, the desert wind whispered through mesquite trees, scattering dry leaves across the patio like brittle bones. A lone street lamp flickered at the end of the cul-de-sac, casting long, crooked shadows across the yard. Sarah sat on the edge of the bed in the dim light of a single lamp, her reflection warped in the mirror across the room. The letter trembled in her hand, edges curling where her sweat soaked the paper. On the nightstand, a photograph of Daniel and the kids smiled back at her, glass smudged, frame chipped at the corner. Their perfect life looked fragile now, like porcelain dropped once and glued back together, cracks spiderwebbing beneath the surface. Sarah didn't want to go to Elena's house, not now, not when the air felt like fire and every passing car looked like a threat. But Elena had called again, voice low and urgent. "You need to hear this in person." So Sarah went. Inside Elena's dimly lit living room, the past returned in fragments. The smell of cigarette smoke, the cheap wood paneling, the clock ticking too loudly on the wall. Elena had kept everything Daniel didn't know. Old letters, photographs, court records, it was all there, waiting. And at the center of it all was Tomas Alvarez. Sarah had met him at 19 in a rundown bar in New Mexico. The kind of place where the jukebox drowned out the sound of deals being made in the parking lot. He was magnetic, eyes like polished onyx, smile sharp enough to cut through hesitation. Together they built a life on lies, stolen IDs, credit card scams, money laundering through shell companies no one would trace. For a while, it almost felt thrilling, until the night it all collapsed. Tomas had taken the fall when the police raided their motel. Sarah ran. She left him bleeding from a bullet graze and never looked back. New name, new state, new life. But Tomas hadn't forgotten. Now, 10 years later, Eleanor slid a file across the table. Inside was a single newspaper clipping. A girl had gone missing the same week of the motel raid. A runaway Tomas had used in one of their scams. The police never solved it. Daniel must have seen this. Maybe that's why he was pushing so hard before he died. Maybe he thought Sarah knew more than she ever admitted. Elena leaned back, arms crossed. Tomas called me last week. He knows you're here. Sarah's stomach knotted. What does he want? To finish what you started, Eleanor said flatly. Sarah shook her head. I didn't hurt that girl. I didn't even... Daniel thought you knew something. Eleanor cut in. He told me he was going to the police if you didn't come clean. Sarah's voice rose. I didn't kill anyone, Elena. Elena's gaze didn't soften. Then you better hope Tomas believes that. Because the cops, they're not going to care about the difference. Rain had started outside, rare for Arizona this time of year. It streaked the living room window, blurring the glow of a lone street lamp into a hazy smear of light. The walls closed in with every drop, the air thick with dust and old secrets. On the coffee table lay evidence of a life Sarah tried to bury. Photographs of her and Tomas laughing in motel parking lots. Receipts for stolen goods. A grainy mugshot of Tomas staring straight into the camera, eyes dead and unreadable. Elena's cat slinked across the room, tail twitching, pausing near the file as if it too sensed the weight of what it contained. Outside, thunder rolled low and distant, promising more storms to come. Daniel confronted Sarah the night after she returned from Elena's house. The storm still lingered, clouds swollen and heavy above the Arizona sky. He was waiting in the living room, arms crossed, eyes dark with something she couldn't name. Fear, maybe, or fury held in check by exhaustion. Sarah tried to walk past him, the file hidden in her purse, but his voice stopped her cold. Who is Tomas? Her heart dropped. He had said the name like a weapon. Daniel had been digging. Through her emails, her old boxes in the attic, maybe even Elena. He must have read the letters, the newspaper clipping, everything she had tried to keep buried. He stepped closer. I know about the girl, the scams, the motel, all of it, Sarah. Her mouth went dry. She wanted to deny it, to tell him he was wrong, but the look in his eyes told her he already knew the truth. You should have told me, he said quietly, voice cracking. You should have trusted me before this turned into something we can't undo. Sarah hated the tremor in his words, hated the way he looked at her now, like she was a stranger, like the last 10 years had been a lie. But mostly, she hated herself for knowing he was right. Sarah whispered, It was over, Daniel. That life, Tomas, it ended years ago. Then why is he writing to me? Daniel shot back. Why is your sister talking to him? Why do I have cops asking me about some girl who vanished the same week you disappeared from New Mexico? Sarah flinched. I didn't hurt her. Daniel's voice rose. You ran. You left him bleeding and ran like none of it mattered. What am I supposed to think? Tears burned her eyes. I was scared. Daniel stared at her, jaw tight. You should be scared now, Sarah, because this, he gestured to the file, doesn't just go away. It never does. Lightning split the sky outside, white veins flashing across black clouds. The living room lights flickered, shadows jerking along the walls like startled animals. Daniel stood near the fireplace, shoulders tense, his reflection warped in the darkened window behind him. Papers from the file lay scattered across the coffee table, old photos curling at the edges, ink faded but damning. Sarah stood barefoot on the cold tile floor, dress clinging to her from the humid air, hair plastered to her temples. The room smelled of rain seeping in through a cracked window, the scent sharp and metallic. Somewhere outside, a dog barked, then fell silent, leaving only the sound of Sarah's unsteady breathing filling the space between them. The morning sun burned over the Arizona desert, unforgiving and merciless, as if reflecting Sarah's inner turmoil. She sat on the porch, hands clasped tightly around a mug that had long since cooled. The storm from last night had passed, leaving the air thick and still, almost suffocating. Daniel had delivered his ultimatum last night, and it weighed on her like chains. Tell the truth or I will. His words had cut sharper than any physical blow because they weren't empty threats. He meant them. Sarah replayed the confrontation over and over. She knew she couldn't lie anymore, not entirely. Daniel already had enough fragments to piece together her past, and Tomas was somewhere, waiting, calculating. Her mind drifted to her children. They were safe for now, but she knew how fragile that safety was. If the truth came out, if she couldn't control it, everything she had built, her family, her life, even her carefully constructed identity, would collapse. She tried to breathe, tried to focus on something normal. The chirp of a sparrow, the faint hum of a neighbor's air conditioner. But nothing was normal anymore. Every shadow, every sound, every flicker of movement reminded her that she was cornered. And corners, she had learned, are dangerous places. Daniel appeared on the porch steps, coffee in hand, eyes dark and steady. Have you thought about what I said? Sarah looked down at her hands. I don't know if I can. You can, he said firmly. Or you can let it spiral out of control. Your secrets aren't safe anymore. Not from me, not from Tomas, not from anyone. Her voice faltered. Daniel's jaw tightened. Tomorrow morning, Sarah. You tell me everything, or I take it to the police myself. No more hiding, no more excuses. She nodded slowly, though inside panic twisted like a living thing. The sun reflected off the desert sand, hot and blinding, creating mirages along the horizon. Dust swirled across the yard, catching in the curls of Sarah's hair, sticking to damp strands near her temples. The porch felt too small, the wooden slats rough beneath her fingers. A neighbor's sprinklers hissed faintly, droplets scattering across the driveway, glinting in the sunlight. The house seemed too quiet, yet the air was electric, as if anticipating the inevitable storm. Sarah's dress clung to her from the previous night's humidity. Her bare feet dug into the weathered wood, nails scraped and dirty, trembling ever so slightly. The shadow of a tumbleweed drifted across the yard, carried by the still air, like a silent omen of what was coming. The desert night had settled over Sarah like a weight she couldn't lift. The hum of cicadas filled the backyard, mingling with the faint hiss of an old window air conditioner. Her car tires crunched on the gravel driveway as she drove toward a place she hadn't been in over 10 years, a place where every shadow felt alive and every step threatened exposure. She pulled up to a dimly lit motel on the outskirts of town, its neon sign flickering lazily, buzzing in rhythm with her pulse. Room 12, Tomas Alvarez. The name alone made her stomach twist, but she had no choice. She needed answers, needed to understand why he had resurfaced now, why Daniel's death seemed like only the first domino. Tomas opened the door before she could knock. His face hadn't changed much, eyes like polished obsidian, smile sharp, calculating. He stepped aside, gesturing her in. The air smelled of stale smoke and cheap soap. You came, he said, voice low, almost amused. Didn't think you had the courage. I have no choice, Sarah whispered. Her hands clutched the purse she had carried like armor. You wrote to him, Daniel. Now it's all coming out, isn't it? Tomas didn't answer immediately. He motioned toward a worn armchair. Sit, let's not waste words outside. She sank into the chair, legs stiff, every nerve screaming. Tomas lit a cigarette, the glow illuminating his features in the dark room. You left me bleeding, Sarah, 10 years ago. Did you ever think about what that would mean? I had to survive, she said quietly. I couldn't stay. Everything was falling apart, and I had no one. You think I didn't survive? He exhaled a thin stream of smoke. I waited. I knew you'd need me one day, that your life would unravel. I didn't ask for any of this, she murmured. Her voice trembled, betraying her composure. Daniel, he died. I didn't plan it. Tomas leaned forward. Accidents don't usually happen to people who know too much. You've got shadows behind every door now, Sarah. Friends, family, the law. And me. Her throat tightened. I'm not the same person you knew. That life is gone. For you, maybe. But I never forgot. Never forgave. And now you're tangled again. His gaze softened, just slightly, almost tenderly. I did care for you once. Still do, maybe. But that doesn't change what happened. Doesn't change the stakes, Sarah shivered. I can't go back. I can't face it all again. I barely survived the last time. Tomas leaned back, exhaling smoke. You have no choice, Sarah. It's not just Daniel anymore. It's Elena, the letters, the cops, the girl. And soon, everyone else will want answers. If you don't tell them first, they'll come for you. Silence hung in the room, heavy and electric, as if the walls themselves were listening. The distant wail of a siren echoed faintly through the night, mingling with the steady hum of the motel's neon sign. "I never wanted this life," Sarah said finally, voice breaking. "I thought I could escape it. I thought I could bury it all and start over." Tomas's lips tightened. "You can't bury the past, Sarah. It doesn't stay buried. And now, with Daniel gone, it's all coming for you." She closed her eyes for a moment, the weight of 10 years pressing down. "I'm scared." "You should be," he said softly. "But you're stronger than you think. Just remember, sometimes the only way out is through the fire." Sarah nodded, gripping the armrests until her knuckles were white. She rose to leave, the echo of her heels on the motel floor a faint percussion of inevitability. Outside, the night was still, but it no longer felt empty. Shadows lurked in every corner, and the storm that had been building in her life was ready to strike. And somewhere in the distance, the desert wind whispered promises of confrontation, of truths about to be exposed, of secrets she had hoped would remain buried forever. The night was suffocating, heat lingering from the day like a wet blanket. The pool shimmered under the pale moonlight, deceptively calm, reflecting the red glow of a distant neon sign from a corner store. Sarah's hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the patio table, the file from Eleanor resting nearby. She could hear the faint shuffle of Daniel's footsteps inside, the creak of floorboards marking every step he took. He came out onto the patio, a glass of whiskey in hand, eyes dark with exhaustion and suspicion. "We need to talk," he said, voice low, almost reverent in the tense silence. "I know you've been hiding things from me. I can't ignore it anymore." Sarah's throat tightened. She wanted to run, to hide, to vanish into the night, but she couldn't. Not now. "It's over, Daniel," she whispered, voice barely audible. "You don't understand. It's done. I left that life behind." He took a step closer, placing the glass on the table. "Do you think I'm blind?" he asked. "Do you think I can't see the truth behind your eyes? You lied to me. Lied about your past, about Tomas, about everything." Her heart pounded. The adrenaline coursing through her veins made her fingers twitch, muscles tense, every nerve on edge. I didn't want you involved," she said. "I tried to protect you, protect the kids. I couldn't tell you. It would have destroyed us." Daniel reached for her hand, but she pulled back instinctively. "You should have trusted me," he said, frustration bleeding into his voice. "Instead, you left me in the dark, and now it's too late. There's no going back." The pool glimmered beneath them, deceptively serene. Sarah's mind raced, the corners of the night closing in. Memories flashed violently. Tomas, Eleanor, the girl from New Mexico, Daniel's last words before the confrontation, the letters, the files. Panic clawed up her chest, suffocating. I can't let this ruin everything," she whispered to herself, backing toward the water's edge. Daniel stepped forward, oblivious to her intent. The last syllable of her sentence hung in the air as instinct overtook reason. Before she could stop herself, she shoved. Daniel's body tumbled into the pool with a splash that shattered the stillness. He struggled at first, coughing, gasping, eyes wide with disbelief and betrayal. Sarah's hands flew to her mouth as she tried to pull him out, but a perverse part of her knew it was too late. Daniel flailed, water churning around him, the reflection of the moon distorted into jagged, mocking shards. "Sarah!" he screamed, panic turning into terror, his voice swallowed by the water. She clutched the edge of the pool, knees shaking, her dress soaked from the humid air. She pressed him under once, twice. His hands clawed at her, his eyes pleading, but the fear, rage, and desperation that had built for years erupted in her chest. Each push was fueled by the knowledge that he had uncovered the life she had tried to bury, the secrets she had tried to leave behind. Finally, he went still, water lapping gently over his face, chest rising and falling for the last time. Sarah sank to the ground beside the pool, shaking violently, staring at the lifeless body floating before her. Her mind refused to process what had happened. Denial, horror, relief, all tangled together. A siren wailed faintly in the distance, growing louder, pulling her back to reality. Neighbors peered from behind curtains, whispering to each other, uncertain if what they were seeing was real. Sarah stayed kneeling, fingers digging into the warm tile, voice caught in her throat. "It wasn't supposed to. I didn't mean..." Her words dissolved into sobs. The moonlight glinted off the water, casting fractured shadows across the yard, illuminating the destruction of everything she had tried to control. The desert night seemed to hold its breath, witnessing the culmination of secrets, lies, and betrayal. Somewhere, the wind carried a warning, a reminder that nothing buried truly stayed buried. The storm Sarah had been running from had finally arrived, and there would be no turning back. The flashing red and blue lights of police vehicles cut across the suburban street, throwing long, fractured shadows over the Bennett house. Officers moved with practiced urgency, photographing the pool, marking evidence, and questioning neighbors who had peeked from behind drawn curtains. Sarah sat inside, wrapped in a damp towel, sipping lukewarm water, pretending to be calm while every nerve screamed. Detective Harris crouched beside the pool, notebook open, eyes scanning the scene. Bodies floating face down, no visible trauma beyond the water. But the wife, she's clearly in shock. We'll need statements from anyone who saw or heard anything. Officers went door to door. A neighbor's account came first. I heard yelling around 10, thought it was just another argument, then a splash. I called 911 right away, another added. She ran out screaming. He was in the pool. I couldn't do anything. Sarah rehearsed her story over and over. It was an accident. He slipped. Every repetition made her stomach churn. Inside, fragments of her past life, Tomas, Elena, the girl, flashed. She clenched her jaw. Every detective's question was a threat, every glance a probe into her soul. Detective Harris approached her gently. Ma'am, we'll need a full statement. What happened tonight? I came outside, Sarah whispered, voice shaky. And he just fell. I tried to reach him, but it all happened so fast. He nodded, scribbling notes. Was there any history of arguments, threats, or anything unusual? Sarah's throat tightened. She shook her head. No, nothing. It's just... Her words faltered, leaving only a tremor of panic. Elena appeared shortly after, eyes wide as she surveyed the scene. She whispered to Sarah, the cops are going to ask about the letters, about everything. Be careful, Sarah nodded, swallowing hard. She felt the weight of every secret pressing down, knowing the investigation could unravel everything. Officers examined Daniel's desk and found his journals, meticulously detailing his suspicions, unexplained calls, fragments of Sarah's past, mentions of Tomas and the missing girl. Detective Harris read portions aloud. Daniel was clearly gathering evidence on his wife. It appears he suspected more than what she admitted. The police moved on to forensic work, measuring the pool, taking samples of water and surrounding tiles. Every detail was scrutinized. Footprints, scuff marks, the angle of the patio chair where Sarah had fallen back during the struggle. Nothing escaped their meticulous inspection. Sarah sat on the couch, watching silently, the hum of the refrigerator loud in the tense air. She noticed the way the police catalogued each piece of evidence, the way neighbors whispered in clipped tones, eyes darting between her and the pool. The house felt smaller, every corner a witness. By evening, the detectives had compiled statements, photographs, and initial findings. The body had been removed, and for the first time the house was eerily quiet. Sarah wandered into the backyard, staring at the still pool. It seemed innocent again, reflecting the moonlight, yet she knew the truth. Detective Harris's voice broke through the quiet. We'll continue the investigation, ma'am. Please stay available for further questioning. We may need to review additional details about your past, including anyone you've had contact with recently. Sarah's stomach dropped. Tomas, Elena, Daniel's journals. Everything she had tried to bury was now under scrutiny. She sank onto the patio chair, hands pressed to her face. Outside, the desert wind rustled through mesquite branches, a faint reminder that secrets rarely stay hidden. The investigation had begun, and Sarah knew that the facade she had so carefully maintained was starting to crumble. And somewhere in the distance, the desert night seemed to whisper a warning. The truth always comes to light, and the cost of hiding it can be devastating.